Hello! I hope that you are doing well. I am thrilled, beyond thrilled, to share this recipe with you. It comes from the How Not to Die Cookbook. This is the Michael Grieger cookbook, which has a book that he actually wrote first, I think. So today we are making what he calls mac and cheese. This is a whole plant-based recipe. So this is actually not cheese. It is pureed veggies. So this recipe is genius. I cannot wait to share it with you. So let's get started. I have going on the stove a pot of water that's gonna boil, as well as a pot for steam sauteing, if you will, some veggies. And so I'm starting with a red onion, which the idea is to get a full cup of onion. I think my guess is that because I'm doing a double batch, that a half cup would be half of this onion and a full cup is going to be the whole onion. That's my guess. And so I'll just do a double check just to make sure I don't need more. That is the only reason why I ever measure vegetables. I do not care if I get too many. I care if I don't have enough. So, if this turns out to be 2 cups, which it looks like it will be, I'm not going to mess with that. I'm not going to take less. I just didn't want to have not enough. So there goes my onion into the steaming. And then I need 3 cups of either butternut squash or carrots. So what I have on hand right now is carrots. And the directive is just that they would be chopped. So what's happening right now is that we are getting our vegetables soft in order to go into the blender with a bunch of other ingredients that will become the sauce. And I have done this recipe with both carrot or butternut squash as the base. They both work great. I don't have any qualms with either. It's just either what you have on hand or what was cheaper that day or what you personally like more. Just to give myself a fighting chance, I've cut these to have flat surfaces. And then I'm making them a little smaller because I have a large carrot here. If it was a really skinny carrot, I wouldn't make any big deal about just cutting it into discs. But these are kind of medium sized. And the directive, once these are going in that broth, that steaming saute, the directive is 8 to 10 minutes. But essentially you're going for something soft. So let me first say, when I first looked at this recipe, I felt so intimidated. I've got 1 pot, a second pot, and a blender, and then it actually is meant to go into the oven. So you're talking about like 4 containers to wash. That kind of felt like a bummer to me. I don't like doing a lot of dishes. Like 1 pot and a cutting board is kind of where I tap out with dishes. But whole plant-based cooking often requires a little bit more than that, as you have probably seen from time to time, especially if you follow any of like the summer-based recipes. However, that being said, I first made this recipe on a Saturday. So Saturdays are kind of my day to not do a lot of cooking. So I was not at all thrilled at the prospect of having to do a big ordeal kind of a meal. But I had the ingredients on hand for this type of a recipe. And so I said, well, let me just give it a shot. It went super fast. It was super tasty. I was hooked in a hot minute. And I've made it like 4 times since then. So all of that to say, if you look at all this and you feel intimidated, for instance, there's a bunch of ingredients that go into the sauce that can feel stressful. But what you'll see is they come together so fast. So a lot of times people will look at a recipe and they'll say, oh my gosh, look at all those ingredients. But a bunch of them are kind of like seasoning spices. They come together fast. So, try not to judge it by its cover, if you will. Give it a fighting chance. So I'm almost done with my carrots. Also, I adapt this recipe a little bit in that I add some tofu. You could also add tempeh. I think tofu is a little more processed than tempeh, which is why Dr. Grieger would suggest tempeh and not tofu. I do both, but it's up to you what you want to do. So I'm going to go ahead. I've got 4 cups. Remember, it was supposed to be 3, but you'll also recall I'm a veggie hog. I always add a little bit more. And where did I put my spatula? One never knows with me. I think that's the reality. I never know where I've put these things. So I'm going to go ahead and give that a little toss, a little turn. And I think, yes, I need to add my garlic. So I also have, it should be 1 clove of garlic, but I have some tiny little cloves in here too. So I'm going to roughly give these a chop because remember, they're going into the blender. So I'm just going to roughly chop them and let them cook with everything else. And then when they go into the blender, it's not going to matter. So I did 4 because they were kind of tiny little things. So I'm going to let this do its thing. Let those veggies get a little soft. And actually, just to really help that along, I'm going to put the cover on it. And then I'm going to step over to my blender. And this is why this recipe can go so fast, right? I can be getting my water ready to boil. I can be getting my vegetables soft. I can be prepping, look, I did it again. I can be prepping this over here. So I am a little uncertain if I can do a double batch in here without going overboard. So I'm going to start with 1, and then I've got other ingredients on hand and ready to go. It's very typical for me to have dry ingredient and wet ingredients. So I typically go the silver one for my wet and the white ones for my dry. There's no rhyme or reason to that. That's just the way that I like it. And if I go down my list, it's a lot of nutritional yeast because nutritional yeast is going to add in the flavor, if you will, for in place of cheese. And the great thing about this recipe is, you know, with regular cheese and dairy-based mac and cheese, the noodles start to absorb some of that, and you can end up with kind of a dry dish. This sauce stays really nice and creamy. So amazing. Okay, so a 1/2 cup of nutritional yeast. That is a lot. Most recipes will call for like a couple tablespoons, but this one, because of it acting like cheese, right, is going to be that. So that's my nutritional yeast, 2 tablespoons of almond butter. So I get my almond butter at a wholesale store. You can get it anywhere, but I find it useful to get it in bulk because of the type of cooking that we do. So this is a very natural one, right? So you'll tend to have oil on the top, and then it's a little thicker along the bottom, so you just kind of want to be prepared for that. Let's see, 2 teaspoons of blended lemon peel. I don't use his blended lemon peel because I don't have the energy for it, but do what you will. So there's my 2. That's going to also add some of that tang that you would normally get from cheese. 2 teaspoons of miso paste. So I actually go to the Asian food market for my miso paste. I have found it at one grocery store that wasn't Asian, but the miso paste I buy at the Asian market is kept in the fridge, the refrigerator section, and at the other grocery store it wasn't, and that just, I was like, I'm not sure about that, so I do it here. A teaspoon of stone ground mustard. I refuse to measure mustard, so teaspoon-ish. A 1/2 teaspoon of paprika. This is where my plastics come in. They have this little slidable deal. So a 1/2 teaspoon there. I've got to grab my spice blend. I'll do that in a minute. A 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric. So Dr. Grieger adds turmeric to a lot of recipes in this 1/4 teaspoon kind of way. It's a great anti-inflammatory ingredient, so enjoy it if you can. I'm actually going to add a teaspoon of salt. He does not add salt to his recipes. And then I'm just going to take a quick rinse of my hands here because I've got all kinds of things. And in the meantime, my water is ready to go here. So now you may have caught on just by watching my videos, I have a gluten intolerance. So I am using a chickpea-based pasta. It just so happened that they were selling it in bulk at the wholesale store not long ago. It's actually gone already. Like I went twice and it was gone. So this one is chickpea. I think it said somewhere that the only ingredient, ingredients, chickpea flour, and that is it. So the great thing about that is you get this kind of high fiber, 8 grams of fiber. That's really unusual for pasta. So I'm going to give those a quick stir. My vegetables are doing their thing. And because I've divided this out and I'm not sure if all the vegetables will fit, and I think 2 more cups of liquid will fit, then I'll go ahead and add the rest of that other stuff in. But I just wanted to be careful. And then I also want to take a look at my recipe. Oh, I just dropped my boxes everywhere. Combine the drained macaroni, stir in the cooked greens. Yes. Okay, so the greens is broccoli in the recipe traditionally. So I'm going to grab my broccoli, and what's going to happen, I'm just going to throw it into my pasta water because I don't want to do 2 separate things. Now my oven is also preheated, so you see how all of this comes together. And the recipe calls for 2 cups of cooked broccoli for a double batch. You know me, that's ridiculous, so I've got at least 4 there. I love adding extra, and this has about 5.5 minutes to go. The rest of my broccoli I can use for meals that I make on the weekend. I can use them for lunches, the kids' school lunches, so all these different things, different ways. Just checking in on my veggies here. And essentially what you're looking for with your vegetables is that they would become fork tender. I've actually got a knife here that's cheating, but I do have to apply a little bit of pressure so they're not quite ready. So while I'm waiting on that, I'm also going to prep my tofu. So I watched a woman at the store the other day spend like 5 minutes looking at tofu. I get it. I used to too. This one has become my favorite. It is a soya product. Organic tofu, super firm. And so they have done a lot of the pressing of the water out of it already. It's nice and dense. And I really like that. So when I do this, you can also buy them pre-chopped, but you won't get as much. So I just need to get into my package. Maybe not with my sharpest knife because that's a disaster waiting to happen. And I've told you all, I'm very good at cutting myself. So I promise to edit it out if I ever do cut myself. So I'm just going to pull out my tofu, and I'll just put this aside for now, but there's just a little bit of water in the bottom. And what you have is a block of tofu. So all I do with that is slice it. And it's just going to go in the pan that ultimately everything else is going to go in. And I'm actually going to turn down this crazy boiling pot because that will boil over in a hot second. Hey, back to the chickpea pasta. So I have tried a whole lot of gluten-free flours. Dr. Grieger's big thing was, if you're going to eat pasta, eat something with a high fiber content. And so that's how we started looking into other possibilities, like lentil pasta. There's another brand of chickpea pasta, Banza, which also utilizes tapioca flour and also has a super high protein content. So the great thing about that is it's so nice when you're eating pasta to know that you're also getting a good amount of protein and fiber. Because isn't that the reason why people didn't want carb pasta type stuff anyways? They didn't feel like they were getting enough nutrients. So this way you can. So I have a nice pile of tofu here. I can actually stick that into my pan. And, you know, I'm going to bake it according to the directions because I have that ability. But another thing you could do once your sauce is ready is just dump it into your pot and serve. I think there's very little gain from the baking, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyways because I'm a faithful, obedient person that follows the directions sometimes. I don't measure my mustard, though, so I don't know. Kind of do whatever is the reality there. So this is cooking up well. It's got 2 minutes to go. I do want to take another look at my carrots and see how they're doing. The good thing is I have a high-speed blender too. So once I take that stuff and throw it into that blender, it's going to go really fast. I'm also going to get my colander ready. Now, I have low cupboards. So when it comes to trying to dump foods, It's a little bit of a trick for me. I have to kind of contort my body in ways I'd rather not. But it is what it is, and I'm working with it. Gosh, it's going to be so close. I think I probably can do it. This is the point where you should say to me, well, if you wouldn't add all those extra veggies, it would fit for sure. And I would say, touche. Okay, so I'm going to turn that burner off and see if I can throw the rest of my other ingredients in here. I think it actually is going to fit. Just barely. Would you look at that? So this is vegetable broth ultimately. And along with that, see if I can find my tablespoon. Let's see if I can remember the ingredients. It was 2 tablespoons of the almond butter. And let's see if I can do it in under a minute. You guys, this is my most favorite time is to race clocks and see what I can do. 2 teaspoons of this. 2 teaspoons of miso. Heaping teaspoons in this case. A half cup of nutritional yeast. This is like my most fun. Like, can I beat the clock? Can I make it all fit into one container? Some random amount of mustard. That's roughly what it's supposed to be. A half teaspoon of paprika. A 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric. And a partridge in a pear tree. I've got 13 seconds, you guys. I'll do a half teaspoon of salt this time. And rinse my hands. So, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Beep, beep, beep. I still have almond butter on my knuckles, but it's cool. So we're going to go over here and allow my noodles and broccoli to drain. So with the chickpea pasta, it's 8 ounces as opposed to like a 12-ounce, for instance. And so a little less. So I'm using 3 boxes to give me 24 ounces total. And then I'm just going to give these a quick rinse, nothing too intense. I think that all of this will fit in my glass pan. That's the other game I play, is the will it fit game. Once we get it to this point, yeah, I think it's gonna fit. Okay, so we're gonna come over here and find the lid. Stick this on, and then I'm gonna start slow. And we're just going to grind this into a no cheese sauce. You can see it gets all smooth in there. It's also hot. So bring it down. I've still got almond butter all over me. And so what we have is a really full blender of cheese sauce, which is going to go through this pasta. And then I'm going to top it with some breadcrumbs in the end. And that too is really optional. I have a feeling, like, for myself, like, does this really matter? If I didn't have breadcrumbs on hand, I would not be sad. I wouldn't run to the grocery store to make sure that I had them. Remember, his recipe does not call for the tofu. I've added that for a little extra protein in our lives. in the Whole Bowls book, there's a totally different vegetarian no cheese sauce, and she adds a tomato under her breadcrumbs, which adds a little bit of tang and a little bit of color. I have some kids that don't love tomato, so I'm not doing that here. But happily, all of them love broccoli, and since I cooked it for a little bit, it's going to be really soft as well. Sometimes I've not been as on the ball and my broccoli doesn't stay, or it's a little harder. This one is going to fall apart a little bit more, which is kind of nice. It makes it harder for them to take it out. So I just wanted to get a little bit of that mixed together. And like I said, whereas a lot of cheese sauces would kind of soak up and you'd end up eventually with like a dry sauce, this one, not so. This is going to stay nice and saucy for you. And, how much tofu you add is totally up to you. In the past, I did try adding a full block of tofu per batch. It just felt like a lot of tofu. So here I'm adding 1 block of tofu to a double batch. But that being said, oftentimes if I open a package, I don't like saving it or having to make another plan. So, do what you will. So I've almost got that all stirred in the way I would want it to be. This is going to bake in the oven for 20 minutes, which is not long at all. I'm going to sprinkle it with a little bit of breadcrumbs before I do that. But that is it. And you really have, right? When you think about it, first you might look at your meal and you're so used to an old meal. And you would say, oh, maybe that's not enough broccoli. Maybe my family's not getting enough veggies. And then you remember, oh my gosh, the sauce is made of veggies. It's made of carrots and onion. Really good stuff. So you have a ton of veggies in here that are actually hidden in the sauce. It's really tasty. It's like the tastiest that I've really come across. And again, because you're getting the turmeric and nutritionally actually has vitamin B12 in it. So many happy things here. So super healthy mac and cheese, if you will. Again, I'll bake it for 20 minutes with some breadcrumbs on top, and that will be the meal. Obviously, you could add a salad. You could change out broccoli for like spinach or add spinach in addition to broccoli because it's not like spinach takes up a lot of space. But if you're looking for a little bit of extra leafy green, you could put peas in there. If you used to do like tuna and peas, that was a big thing when I was a kid. So that's that. I hope you enjoy it, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.